The titles don't lie, folks. It is indeed Prehistory Guys question time. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for all gathering here on this Tuesday night. Hope you're all well. Michael here.
And Rupert here, and it's wonderful to see so many of you already there. I'm just obviously being prepared as usual. I've now got to close windows somewhere else because I'm getting echoes. That's all right. Everything's back to normal now.
Okay, normal service will be resumed. Yeah. Insofar as we ever have normal service here. As I said, yeah, hope you're all well out there, folks. I see you're all chatting happily amongst yourselves, and a lot of, names I recognise. If there are some people there who have not appeared in the chat yet and are new to Prehistory Guys Q&A, we do this every second Tuesday. Is it the second Tuesday of the month? Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting already.
I think it's actually. Oh no, it is the second Tuesday of the month this month. It was last month that we slipped to the third, wasn't it? Yeah. Sometimes the days run away with us.
Yeah. So no, every second Tuesday we pop up to answer questions as best we can from folk that have we've invited. Questions on our community, on the YouTube community pages. And how many questions have we got tonight that we've mounted up in the last month? Actually, a lot came in the last few days, didn't they?
Yeah, that's true. We did get quite a few in the last couple of days, but do you know what? I didn't count. Probably a dozen.
It doesn't. Anyway, talk amongst yourselves. I just have a problem with my screen here, not being able to see.
Okay, you sound
properly.
Your sounds. Yeah. You seem a little bit thin as well, audio-wise, to me. Unless my earphone is packing up.
It may be that. It may be that. Anyway, 68 folks have joined us, so that's a lot more than we can see in the chat there. Before we get on with answering questions, this is what people have come here for. Sorry, I haven't had a moment to take a look at the chat and see if there's any particular questions there. However, before we get on with getting into the questions, is there anything springs to your mind, Rupert, that we need to convey to folks out there?
Well, I think as far as I'm concerned, the biggest one is that we're kind of romping forwards on Standing with Stones 2.
Yeah.
And I suppose
that'll look like
a stretch.
Yeah.
But it is definitely picking up momentum, and so the research and and us just banging heads, thinking where are we taking this and how are we weaving this story together. It's it's just so nice to be back into doing. It's a huge project, and we're quite intent that one of the things that we've said to each other is that we can't be one of those things in filmmaking where people say, no, the second one wasn't as good as the first. We just can't do that. Yeah, no pressure. It really, so we're being really about it's got to be right. It's got to be right.
But just to so folks are aware of the kind of way it will go. I mean, we're just at early stages and still pulling together what the narrative is that we'll want to tell. And until we've got that narrative, we won't have a clue as to what the budget will be for it. Where we'll need to go, where we'll need to travel, what kit we'll need, the hotels we'll need to stay at, all those kinds of things,
Because there's going to be people thinking, well, why aren't you camping again? Well, because we're 15 years older, that's why.
Yes, yeah. And this one won't be a travelogue, so we won't be travelling in quite the same way as we did before. We will... I suspect we'll be slightly bit more all over the place. It won't be a road trip. It won't be a road trip, put it that way. So that yeah, so until we know that story, we won't be able to have a budget. But when we've got a budget, then we'll be able to put the Kickstarter campaign in place so people know exactly what the goal is. Having said that, I've spent most of the day setting up a Buy Me a Coffee campaign, which we'll share with you when we can. And of course, already people can contribute to what's going on by becoming, by joining us on Patreon. If you're new here, you'll see a lot of friendly people in the chat there. I tell you, I think 95% of the folk exchanging views and saying hello in the chat already are Patreon supporters. So if you came over and joined us on Patreon, you'd be rest assured that you'd be joining a very lively and friendly community. So,
it's great to see so much of the world, all coming together in these things. It's lovely. I mean, we've got Canada, Cambodia, and of course all over Britain. Fantastic.
Love it. Yeah. So that's about what we've been up to. I don't think there's anything else we should really dwell on before we get down to business. Frankly,
not
Rupert.
Not really. Yeah. I think. Just eternally
Except
busy.
Just find something else to talk about just for a second, because I've lost one of my panels, which I rely on for making sure that I've got the questions.
Well, for any of you...
no, it's not tech. I promise you it's not tech. This is pure finger problem.
Okay. But for any of you newer comers to this, then if you don't know, it's because Mike is the one who's actually running the studio from his studio.
There it is. Yeah.
I'm just sitting here patched into it, and so I'm broadcasting essentially out of Mike's setup. So, I sit here and I can see some of your comments and what have you. But apart from that, Mike is the one that's just he's like a swan, serene on the surface and feet going like crazy underneath.
Yeah,
that's what's happening over there.
It's all fun. Shall I bring up the first question?
Yeah, go on.
I tell you what, I'm flying blind tonight. I usually get a little moment to, moment in the day sometime to have a look at the questions and sort of look things up, see, what's missing from my knowledge. But tonight, no, it's all going to be a horrible surprise.
Excellent.
All right. The first question is from Jimmy Lawley. How you doing, Jimmy?
Jimmy.
Yeah, still in hospital.
Jimmy, are you out? Yeah. Are you well? Are you out? Have they let you out?
And congratulations.
Or are you in a padded room in a white jacket? What's the problem?
On your 50th birthday.
Yeah. Yeah, happy birthday for last week. Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, Jimmy content asked the question, which I've sort of truncated here, but I'll read Jimmy's full question. And he says, "I love the slavery element on the cattle theory." And do we have to backtrack and say a bit about the cattle theory and how it's been found that the ankle bones...
Well, read the question and then we can... Then we can
surely it makes sense that slavery existed to some extent in the Neolithic. Sure, get things done faster with big whips. I propose a triple theory incorporating religious zealots, slaves and cattle all being used together. Best wishes and take care. Jimmy, the thing is, have you checked what they're pumping into your veins or whatever, what they're giving you in hospital? I don't know what you're on.
Yes.
Too much gas, I think. However, let's be serious about that. Yeah.
Dragging us all into your personal hell there.
Slavery in the Neolithic.
Yeah. Well, the cattle thing that Jimmy was talking about, for those of you that don't know, is some wonderful research that came out of Eastern Europe, where they found that some of the excavated cattle bones that just came up at various archaeological sites, they showed that the cattle's feet bones had basically grown as a result of of constant stress. Basically, these were creatures that were used as traction. They were pulling heavy weights. And we're talking about 8,000, 7,000, 8,000 years ago. So this is pre-farming in Europe. So if they weren't being used for the plough, then they were being used for pulling heavy weights. Now, whether that was enormous timbers or megaliths, whatever it may have been, the point is that they were used for pulling heavy weights. That's what Jimmy was talking about. And then going on to imagine slavery. I think the thing about slavery is that you need to have big enough societies for that to be a thing, where a faction of society can be constantly the oppressed. I suppose you could have hand servants and things like that, maybe, but I don't think you would have had enough people to have had slavery on a level. It always was the thing that the pyramids were built by slaves. That was the thinking until well into the latter part of the 20th century, until they started finding the evidence of actually these people were craftsmen who were very well paid, and indeed on at least one occasion went on strike for more beer and onions, which I think is one of the most glorious points in history, that we on strike for more beer and onions.
And that's true, isn't it? That wasn't a euphemism for more beer and onions.
It's completely true. It's completely true. They went on strike for beer and onions, which I think, oh, good Lord, if life was so simple today, wouldn't that be lovely? Just give me onions and beer, and I'm a happy man. Yeah. But Jimmy, keep up the meds, mate. But I don't think that slavery would have been a factor here, personally. No. What do you think, Michael?
I think I tend to agree with that. The slavery for what? That's the thing. If you're just talking about megaliths and megalithic building. Putting up
it's not a lot of work, is it, really?
It's not that big an amount of work, and the point is, if you've got as long as people weren't too busy ploughing the fields, and you're out of season or what have you, you've got time on your hands. And here's the thing: I think I'll talk about this a bit later when it comes to another question. But people in the Neolithic, and certainly people in the Mesolithic, had a lot more time on their hands than we do.
Yeah.
And as long as they've got a strong enough belief in what they're doing, people will do anything as long as they believe strongly enough that they're getting a benefit out of it. And anyway, slavery usually depends on having another, a nearby cache, or state or whatever that you can raid for slaves. You don't know about the thing, turning your own citizenry into slaves is actually a thing. Hey ho, not unless your society is completely skew-whiff, and in which case it won't last long. Viz the Elgar, I guess. Anyway, I think that we've answered that. Get well soon, yes. Jimmy.
Yes, definitely get well. I hope you're all right. And no doubt Mrs. Sue.
Question from Badger Pa. Do you guys have what you think are some of the firsts in prehistory, i.e. first animal husbandry, gardening, crops, spear tips, arrow tips, fishing and deep sea fishing thing? I'll just get to the whole of that question, actually. Badger asks, but do you guys have what you think are some of the firsts in prehistory, i.e. first animal husbandry, gardening, crops, spear tips, arrow tips, fishing and deep sea fishing? One of the reasons I ask the deep sea fishing is people in North America's east coast have found to have deep sea fish bones in their rubbish, and so do old European sites. And at one time, the ice would have connected all the way across to some extent. It's quite a long question there, Badger, but I think we've kind of got the nub of you, and thank you for your kind words about what we do and all the rest of it. Okay.
Yeah, well, Badger went on to where he was talking about glaciation coming down as far as Kentucky. Yes, I mean it kind of so at the end of the last. Well, technically, we're still in the Ice Age. We're in the temperate interglacial at the moment, but if you go back to effectively the tail end of the Ice Age, so 11, 12, 13,000 years ago, then that ice sheet was still sweeping across from northern Europe. It had retreated it wasn't as far south as France at that point. But it was still sweeping across the Atlantic and going down. It did get as far down as Kentucky, but it was certainly, across. I remember the states with lots of I's in Ohio, Illinois, Iowa, all that going along. So all that was iced up, but you had a straight passage across the Atlantic if you followed the ice sheet. And as Badger said somewhere else in the question, that the Inuit, to them, it's normal. The ice it might as well be landmass. It might move, and it might creak and what have you, but essentially you can walk around on it. You can get out your kayaks and you can fish off the ice, what have you. So essentially, it's just one unbroken landmass from the European continent right the way across to the Americas. So the fact that you've got fishing implements found all over the place, that just makes absolute sense. Yeah. In terms of when you say, do you guys have what you think are some of the firsts? I'm presuming you when you say, do we have some of the firsts? I'm presuming you mean in Europe, as opposed to.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
And so, in that case, I'm going to have to say no.
No, we do not. Definitely do not.
When you look at, oh God, I mean, if you go back into Lower Paleolithic, I mean, we've got, we've got evidence of fishing and axes and all sorts of implements going back, to well before Homo sapiens, even whether it's Heidelbergensis or Neanderthals, there's evidence of tools.
We can do that. We can give you Heidelbergensis. We can give you but they weren't the first.
No, that's the thing. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff in Africa, obviously, but even what was something we were talking about it? It was last year. There was a discovery made, and it was a fishing net. Where the hell was that? Do you know what? I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. But I mean, it's going back such a long way, and it just goes to show that there's so much stuff that is just lost. All we've got is what remains in the archaeological record. But you just get these tantalizing little glimpses of things that you can see something sophisticated from. It's a bit like the Neanderthal string that they found in France last year. That was, you're talking about 120,000 years old or something, and that was really carefully made twine. And you think, well, all right, if they've got that. And they found a basket that was 40-something thousand years old, a woven basket. And you're thinking, well, if they're that clever and sophisticated, then clearly they've been clever and sophisticated for a very long time. And, you can only imagine. I think one of the most exciting things about archaeology generally is that just because dating gets more and more accurate and refined, that you find that another boundary has been pushed back time after time after time after time. Just very briefly, because this is a digression, but it's an exciting one. I think that Martin Sweetman, an archaeologist from, can't remember which university in Britain anyway, but Martin is currently working on, or he has been working on, the evidence globally that there was this comet strike, a massive impact 13,000 years ago, which could have had sufficient global devastation that it could have completely uprooted society back then, and we could have gone into a dark age and had a survivor's situation, that kind of thing. Maybe it's by no means a definite, but it's a possibility. And so when you look at things like that maybe there was this period in prehistory that everything was getting fairly sophisticated, and then something like that happens that takes us all back to ground zero. And we just have to keep kind of plodding on bit by bit by bit, finding out new stuff.
Yeah, we may give it the impression that that everything in prehistory is ours. Ours,
Yes.
hands off. We got here first, but of course, no. And that's part of the narrative we'll be telling in Standing with Stones. That megalithic building did not begin in Britain. Far from it, indeed, as you're probably all aware. But we'll be looking at that story. That's about it, I think, from best we can give you on that, Badger. Yay. So, Kipple, yes, thank you. Thank you for noticing me new bins, me new glasses. Glad you like them.
That's observant.
Yeah, it is.
Who said that? Who said
Kipple.
that? I missed the comment.
Way back up. But I saw it.
Okay.
I saw. Yes.
Kibble,
Daisy.
you need to get out more.
Well, I appreciate Kibble. Daisy, you're very welcome. Greetings to you, Daisy Peters, wherever you are from, wherever in the world you are. Shall I give you our next questioner? Rupert, yes?
Yes.
Question from Nagamal Chupaya, who says, "Hi, greetings from Singapore.
Hey.
Thank you for continuing the sharings. It's so good to learn from our past. We're here today because of the achievements of our ancestors. My question is, if you had the ability to travel back in time, which period would you choose? Paleolithic, Mesolithic, or Neolithic?" What a great question. It's never, we've often tried to ask other people the similar vein of question, but not in those. Yeah. Do you want to go first? Because I'm happy.
No, there'd be reasons that I'd want to go back to all of them. I think I'd probably choose Mesolithic in there, because there's a few things that I'd really like to find out about. Number one is that I am one of the people that believes, for example, that if you look at the Sphinx, that's not the original head, is it? You just look at the proportions of it and you think, well, that body is so immaculately carved, scale-wise, and you look at the head and you go, no, there was something much bigger on there, and they've just cut that head out of it. So what was it? And so I reckon that's Mesolithic. That's one thing. And then see the scale of societies and how sophisticated societies were in Europe as well.
What, in the Mesolithic, you mean?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I think when you look at the fact that, as we just said in the last question, that every time we find something new, it's pushed a boundary back again. That they had this, and I think that we'd be surprised. There might not be much in the archaeological record, but people have been people for a very, very, very long time. And it's just that miserable fact that everything they were using was biodegradable. So there's just nothing left to show for it.
Yeah. So there are many questions I'd like answered from the Neolithic, particularly. And being able to travel back in time. It depends whether I had to stay there or not. Like if I could get back, then I probably would want to solve a few problems. If I had to stay there, it would definitely be the Mesolithic. And I wouldn't have been that clear on that had I not read an article just recently about what the most efficient form of society is. And interestingly, the most successful societies are still with us, and they are some very much in the minority now, South African tribes who have maintained an egalitarian way of life. And they are hunter-gatherers. That's the important thing to note. And studies have found that not only do they live their lives in the most efficient way, and they have abundance, but efficient to the point that they only spend 15 hours a week actually doing stuff, working, i.e. hunting, whatever they're gathering, whatever they do. It is hunter-gatherer lifestyle is actually, if you're in the right place, hugely efficient. And if you're a hunter-gatherer and you have occupied a place, then that lifestyle fits. And I think for security and for ease of lifestyle and abundance, I think I'd go back to the Mesolithic. It's a thought well worth thinking about. Yes, the other particular thing about these tribes is they're very egalitarian and take great pains to make sure that nobody rises above the rest. They're always, they criticize great big. They criticize when you come back with a whole antelope. And I say, well, that was useless. Why couldn't you bring back two? They're always putting, and I'm wondering if it's I'm sort of digressing now. If it's an evolutionary trait that this thing of putting other people down is a kind of leveler. It's an evolutionary sort of stopgap, valve that helps keep societies on a level with each other and cooperating with each other. I'm waffling now, but I think it's an interesting question to answer, and thanks for the question. Shall I move on?
Go on then.
Toss stones.
Oh.
Yes, what?
No, go on. I'd forgotten about this. Go on. You read the question while I just go and find something.
Okay. Oh, yes. Any updates on Doggerland? You have mentioned in the past that more investigation has been undertaking regarding core samples. So have we got anything to update there, Rupert, or have we not?
We do, because I'm presuming that the question, Toss, was on the back of the interview we did with Vince Gaffney.
Yeah.
And because you asked the question, I thought, well, I know what I've heard, which is not a lot. So I thought, well, let's ask Vince and see what he says. So Vince very kindly sent me an email back yesterday, which I'll read to you. He said, as you know, we had our end of project conference at the Antiquaries. That's the Society of Antiquaries in London, via Zoom, because it was all in lockdown. And he has given, in fact, I can put this in the quotes, in the comments, if any of you are interested in this. This is the lectures at the Society of Antiquaries. Someone shall post something there. And he said there is a ton of new information in these lectures, although the issues of the wind farms and the need to work with the developers is becoming paramount. as we now know that the areas set for development actually accords with the late Paleo and Meso Doggerland. There
Wow.
is no northern Doggerland. And then there is another lecture by one of the other archaeologists. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. But hang on, I'm just going to paste this link in as well. So there's a couple of lectures that you can look at there. And then he says in that second lecture, he says at roughly 21 minutes onwards, he's talking about the Doggerland sites and how they're impacted by the wind farms that are being built. What we know now is the correspondence with the wind farm developments and what we now know as Doggerland. Clearly, this is important at a supranational level, and this may be better coming from you. You see, he thinks that it's better if people like us publicise that fact. If you agree, if it's an issue rather than me, blah 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 blah. So that's it. The biggest thing with developments in Doggerland at the moment are the fact that they are trying to get everything sorted out with the wind farm developments, because they could lose a phenomenal amount of archaeological information in that. It's a strange thing that when you look at one of the things that happens all the time in land-based archaeology is that some of the most significant discoveries made year on year are happening because of development. They're putting up a housing estate somewhere, and something gets found, so all the building stops, and they have to call the archaeologists in. It's wonderful. The trouble is that when you're doing this in a marine environment, then an awful lot of the time, they just send drills down to make holes on the seabed, and nobody says anything about anything. So it is a bit of a race against time situation. And we do keep in touch with people like Vince. So as we find things out,
I'll
will
tell you
let
what,
know.
if anybody can get the right stuff done, it's Vince. He is a force of nature, I think, as far as his influence is concerned. So, good luck with that. And it's probably a matter of swings and roundabouts. Maybe these developments will help accelerate interest and accelerate the investigations that need to go on. But I hope that satisfies your questions, Tostone. So
those two lectures are very well worth watching, though.
Okay, I'm going to move on now, Rupert. I realise something. I've missed out Aislinn. I think Aislinn, you're there, and I hope I'm presenting. Aislinn, I'm presenting. Yeah. Because I didn't make a note of it. Aislinn asked us a question. I'm going to slip it in here. Hi guys, Aislinn here from Aberystwyth in Wales. I wonder if you've given more thought to and had time to look further into my theory that the Northern Lights may have been the main attraction on Orkney, other major sites in Scotland. First, I have to confess, no, we haven't had time and all the rest of it to look further into stuff. I'm afraid it's our bad.
Do you know that I've given it? I have given it thought though, and it's one of those things that.
Good man.
The thing is, I love the idea.
Yeah, me too.
But it is one of those things that's unknowable.
How would you find out?
What I mean. If you have any ideas, then do tell us in the chat if you're there.
Here's the question. If you were an archaeologist, what framework would you put in place to investigate that hypothesis?
What would offer evidence for that? Because as an example, that I've for a long time I've thought, for example, if you look at some of the rock art in places, particularly places like Gavrinis, where you
Yeah.
see these arches carved in the stones, and I've always believed that those are rainbows. That you've got no pigment to show anything. Well, a rainbow is something that even today, when we fully understand the physics of it and we know what they are, everybody sees a rainbow and it's still one of the most magical and beautiful things that ever happens. So the fact that they were creating art back then, but without pigment that could echo that, I think carving arcs is pretty much the only way that they could make a representation of that. So if you're talking about something, how would you represent the Northern Lights? How would you show that they were an influence on society or culture? So I love the idea, but I don't know how you would go about proving it.
I love the idea because following it through, it's hard to imagine that they weren't known of, that legend or myth, would spread down from the north, and maybe Orkney and the north could have become a places of pilgrimage, but we'll never know. I don't see how. Unfortunately, it's the sort of thing. I've said this before, I'll say it again. It's the sort of thing you can make a nice novel out of. You could construct a whole.
You could.
You could construct a whole world out of that notion. Based in whatever time you like, really. I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it must have been an extraordinary thing, though. If everything that you're seeing in the heavens is, what you believe it's the gods, you believe whatever you believe it to be, but the fact that you've got these things dancing in the sky over your head, yes, it's magical to us now when we know what it is. Good grief, it must have been extraordinary if you were anthropomorphizing everything.
Yeah. Anyway. Yes, it's a good one to keep in one's imagination when you're looking at how people looked at the skies and what they appreciated, etc. And thanks for having that thought, because it's a really nice bit of colour to put in there, if you forgive the slight pun. Something we forget about, something ethereal, something. Anyway, shall I move on? I think I better have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Diorman asks, has anybody come up with a plausible hypothesis on the purpose of the Thingamabob or found anything else like it? It depends whether you're talking about the Thingamabob that was found in, was it Lincolnshire? Or was it the Thingamabob that was found further down south, I think?
Or indeed the one in Cambridgeshire. They've found Cambridgeshire all over the place, haven't they?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there are quite a few theories about. There's some silly theories of, when you think about it. There's some, when you get a mysterious object like a thingy-bob, you're always going to get wonderful ideas thrown at it. But
you get bonkers ideas, and that's the thing. It's whether there's any connection between the different thingamybobs.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful that you asked the question so concisely.
Yeah.
Because otherwise this could have been an issue.
Yeah.
But
yes, so often. Yeah, one of the things that's come up, could it have been a child's toy? Easy thinking, myself.
I think, yes, I do too. I do too. I think the concise answer has got to be no. Nobody has come up with a plausible explanation.
Hypothesis. I think the Thingamabob probably will, like so many things, remain a mystery.
It will, to us all.
Yeah. Was there ever a date put on the Thingamabob?
I don't think so.
A reliable one?
Don't think so.
No? Okay.
Not carbon datable.
Thank you so much for your question, Diorman. Shall I move on?
Yes, please.
Oh, Jeff Schroeder. Rupert has studying bugs. Oh no, I'm not going to. Jeff snuck a second one in on. The more interesting one is probably, I find anyway. We'll come back to Jeff's second one if we get a chance.
Okay, you could stick them together, really.
Yeah, Jeff says, as an outdoor photographer, I'm always noticing how well foregrounds and backgrounds complement each other naturally, so I'm sceptical about megaliths being placed to intentionally align with distant objects. Can you think of any examples how your photographer's eyes have affected your perception of megaliths? Yes.
It's a lovely question, actually. Because, well, we're both photographers.
Yeah.
I'll take issue with you on the... no, that's wrong. You can be skeptical about alignments with distant objects, but I have to say that the recumbent stone circles, the amount of times that we've seen a recumbent that exactly mirrors the landscape, and I think I mentioned in one of the shows we did a while ago that the one that really illustrated it most powerfully was there's a place called Stonehead, and it's
Stonehead of Daviot.
No, that's Lonehead of Daviot. This is Stonehead. And although they're not very far apart,
I shall go down to the bottom of the garden to eat worms.
But the thing is with Stonehead is that it's actually quite a steeply curved or arched stone, which is very unusual for a recumbent. But the thing is that the hill that it eclipses, if you like, is exactly the same shape. If you just poke your head up over the stone, then you see the shape of the hill behind it. But how have our photographers' eyes affected that? Do you know what I think?
Just can I interrupt one moment? And Martin, before Caledonia,
hello, Martin.
Rupert Michael, he's recently put out a video on YouTube about the recumbent stone circles.
Yeah, yes, he has. Before Caledonia, folks, YouTube channel. Martin does some wonderful stuff on there. Check that out.
Quite prolific there. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah.
Had you passed the baton? Had you passed the baton to me? Had you?
I was just going to say something completely left field, though, and that's
go for it.
The thing about you ask about photographers' eyes, and the thing is that you notice stuff on a different level. You're always looking at wherever it is in the full depth of field, you're always noticing things. And one of the things that I love is because you said how has it affected the way we see the stones, and one of the principal things that it does for me is from a geology point of view, that you can see things like you look at lichen on stones, and lichen is a very good indicator of what kind of stone you're looking at because of the coloration. So if you get orange lichen, for example, it's most likely on a basaltic stone. So you'll get orange lichens on basalt, but you'll get green lichens on granite, for example. And so it's those kinds of things. If you just notice what sort of lichens are around you, it can tell you about the sort of stones that you're looking at as well, which is not necessarily photographic. It's just things that you notice because of photography or because that's the way you see the world, if you see what I mean. Anyway, yes, go on. What were you going to say?
Well, it's kind of a huge question for me, because embarking on making Standing with Stones was so much from the inspiration for making it was not from an absolute interest in archaeology per se, or the Neolithic, or the megalithic, or whatever. It was the photographic aspect of it which I thought had been ignored because the beauty in them. And the the texture, the color, the landscapes that they're in. It's that I wanted to bring to the table with making Standing with Stones. And to be honest, I think Standing with Stones would have been made a bit earlier, but we were waiting kind of for high definition video photography to come in there, because anything before that couldn't have done the textures and all the rest of it justice. And now we're in 4K. Wow. There
is a part of me that would love to just go back and remake the first one again as well with all the modern tech, because oh God, apart from the fact that I'd do it better, I think you did it sublimely well anyway. But yeah, they're just
Yes. So that's the way. I'm not sure about affecting my perception of them. It's not the photography, it's the juxtaposition, it's the presence with them, it's being present in a field or wherever they are with them, which is why the film was called Standing with Stones. It was essential to be with them, to to have our imaginations sparked in that way.
But don't you think that just the way you see the world as a filmmaker actually does make you look at a site in a way that that other people might not? You're just aware of a scene and what the scene is telling you, rather than individual stones. I don't know. I think there's just
somebody asked if doing drone photography had made a difference. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling back and I can't remember who it was exactly. I do beg your pardon. But drone photography, aerial photography in general is having a huge impact on prehistoric archaeology anyway. As far as my own perception or our own perceptions, I think aerial photography in general helps to reinforce, some of the things that are bubbling up in our minds as to the purpose of certainly earthworks, circular earthworks and henges and the rest of it, when we meditate on those shapes and see how similar they were in so many ways. Anyway, that's a thing we're working on. As far as drone photography itself is concerned, it's not the be all and end all at all. I could happily make a film without a drone. It's just helpful sometimes for a bit of storytelling. Drones don't really bring that much to the table, to be honest.
Not really, except that there are some sites where I think there's a context that you get with aerial photography that that you don't. I mean, I think Merivale is a good example on Dartmoor, that from amongst the stones, because it's such a sprawling settlement, that you can't actually see how it's all laid out, whereas an aerial shot gives you so much information. But yes, I think Michael's right. I mean, it doesn't. It depends on the story that you're telling. And sometimes it
don't get me wrong. I love getting footage back from the drone. It's like we're living in the future. Oh, wait a minute. It's just it's crazy world. Just throw this little thing up in the air and the pictures it gets back, and how easy they are to fly. They just obey. Yeah. They're easy to fly. They're not easy to photograph from. I'll qualify that. It's they're easy to fly, but not easy to get the footage. Anyway, I don't want to get into the long grass there.
David says, and there's a good point. David says when you use a drone, you're not looking at things from the perspective of the builder. Yeah, bang on.
Quite right. Yeah. So I'm going to move on to Ross's question. Ross Kramer. Who quite simply asks us, guys, do you have plans to include prehistoric sites on the Korean peninsula in future films? Short answer is no, we don't have plans.
No, we don't have plans. I mean, you've got some. I say you've got some. I'm presuming you're asking that because you're over there. There are some extraordinary megalithic sites in Korea. They tend to be, as far as we know, they tend to be a bit more recent than the megalithic sites over here, more into Bronze Age than Neolithic. But it depends. I mean, we maybe. I mean, we've considered it independently. Outside of at the moment, it's not in. We don't imagine it being in the narrative for Standing with Stones 2. But that's not certain at this stage. It depends, what comes out when we start unraveling it.
And what kind of points we find ourselves needing to make in terms of comparisons and chronologies, of course. That's it. That's the important thing. I don't know off the top of my head what the chronology of the Korean Peninsula
don't have a chronology.
Megaliths
Just most of the dating that I've had out of them is
dating. I mean, sorry,
is that it's later than the Neolithic European stuff. So, but again, I'm not sure what where that official dating comes from, and on what is it based? I don't know. So certainly, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Rest assured, you will find out.
Indeed,
beautiful site over there.
No. Thanks for the question, Ross. Linda next. Linda Nason. Says, I have been watching all your programs. I'm astonished at the sameness of all the monoliths. Actually, that sort of, if we were to make a point about the Korean megaliths, that probably is pertinent to this question. Sameness of all the monoliths and circles, etc. I can't believe that the ideas and plans of all these things were conceived of separately in the British Isles and Europe and Malta and everywhere else they were constructed. Were there engineers, shamans who travelled from community to community, teaching the skills needed to build these things and being supported as essential workers, or did communities which wanted to erect a monument send their master craftsmen or young men as apprentices to learn at the feet of the already established masters? And thank you for your congratulations, Linda. Yes, we reached 35,000 subscribers on YouTube. Later in her comment, Linda left a congratulatory note for us.
It's a nice question, and we've thought for a long time. Well, hang on, let me say to begin with, I think one of the most important things to bear in mind here is that when we talk about archaeology as a whole, when we talk about these time periods of principally Neolithic and Bronze Age, then we see these things all existing in the landscape at the same time, and we don't have any real perception of the centuries and centuries and centuries that just spread through, the building just spread through this long period of time. So it's not as if suddenly ping, all these sites appear all over Europe and indeed, going over into Korea. They didn't all happen at once. And if you think, even now, in a period where we take global travel utterly for granted, and international communication, you look at the time it takes for something to travel fashion-wise from one side of the planet to the other. It's pretty quick, but nevertheless, sometimes there's a little bit of time for it to spread across. Well, go back to a time where there was no speedy travel and there was no international communication that was any faster than that already slow travel, then you can see why it would take centuries for a cultural shift to spread from one continent to another, or even from southern Europe into northern Europe, whatever. That it's that period of time. So the cultural spread, then no, it would have originated. If you're talking about megalithic culture, then it's a bone of contention, and it's one that we'll be talking about a lot. But if we say, as a generalization, that megalithic culture appears to have started in northern France and then disseminated from that point, so going in all directions, south and north, that over centuries, for that to actually become a cultural norm. There would have been a period where suddenly there was this explosion of building, and there might have been an enormous amount of sites that were all built within 20 years of each other. But the actual initial spread would probably have, there'd have been a bit of time, I think. You think it happens faster than that, didn't you, Mike?
Well, I think the idea, between there's a phrase that is used in certain branches of evolutionary theory, and that is punctuated equilibrium. That things don't happen smoothly and sort of develop slowly over time, but it's a much more. You get periods where things change very, very rapidly, and everybody has the same idea at the same time. Let's do that. Once you've got a brand new idea, people assimilate it very, very quickly, and then that's it. Then that plateaus for a long time. People don't like change. It takes quite a perturbation of the system for things to change, and when it does change, it changes quickly. So I'm always looking out for that evidence of quick change from one way of doing things to another. But I have to disagree with Linda on the idea, because I think basically once you got your head round the idea of megalithic building, it's relatively straightforward. Once people have got an idea about, we need to do that, they'll pretty quickly work out how to do it. Now, the thing is, with megalithic building, you're working with very simple base raw materials, what you can get your hands on. And the way those things go up, once you've got a basic style in mind, are functions of the materials you have available. So the similarities between sites worldwide are a function of the materials you've got available, not the basic idea. Once you got, or put another way, once you've got the basic idea that you want to raise a rock, you need to put a rock above to protect something. Well, you put 2 stones won't do. 4 stones is too much. Bingo, there's your 3-legged dolmen. Wherever anybody had the thought of raising a rock to protect something underneath it, it's that straightforward. So I'm dubious about sort of master craftsmen and all the rest of it, except in certain circumstances. That's the other thing. There's such a variety, way megalithic building has been done and for what purpose. Some is more simple than others.
I think also it's important to factor in that we still have this modern cultural. We're so stuck in this notion of, because we want everything done yesterday. And even if we get workmen round to do something in the house, it's like, it's going to take you 4 weeks. What are you talking about? It has to be done now. Whereas we're talking about a period of time where what was the issue was, do we want to do it? And if you want to do it, then the length of time it takes is utterly academic.
Yeah.
So, you look, you can even go back, even just go back to the Renaissance, where you're looking at, say, big cathedral building, that the concept, or capability brown, landscape gardening, the notion of designing something and starting something going in the full knowledge that you would never see it completed. Nobody does that today. Nobody would dream of doing that today. You want to see it finished as soon as possible. So I think there's that to factor in as well. It's dissemination of information. It was a cultural thing that flowed all over. I don't really think They
and
arose.
and populations carried the ideas around with them as well. Yeah. So,
Hope that
thank you
helps in
for.
some way.
Well, yeah, no. I mean,
Good
thank
question.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great, and has us put our thinking caps on if we didn't have them on before. Next question is from Annie Richardson. Annie says, "Hi guys, greetings
Is
from
that Annie from
Vermont."
Vermont?
Annie's from
That's Annie
Vermont.
from
Yeah.
Vermont. Hello, Annie.
Yeah. I've been wondering if the late Bronze Age collapse and subsequent Dark Age in the Eastern Mediterranean had any repercussions for the contemporary societies of Northern and Western Europe. Was there any notable change in monument-megalithic building style, disruption of known trade routes, or population changes that could correlate with the upheaval? Thanks for all the videos and wonderful food for thought. You're welcome.
You are very welcome.
Yes.
This is actually quite an exciting thing, to be honest. And in fact, it's funny that you asked that question because a report, it's only just been published. And I'll be honest, I've got the paper. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. And this is looking at Scandinavian bronze. The paper is all about the Scandinavian Bronze Age. And because we have the technology now, you might have seen in the news. In fact, we did a flash about it. That a little gold hairpiece, a spiral of gold, had been found in a German burial. But we now have the ability. We have the ability to do all the necessary chemical analysis, and you can say, well, that came from Cornwall, and it came from this place. Because that's where you get this signature of the mixture of or the molecular constituents of it's gold with a bit of zinc, and I can't remember what the breakdown was, but anyway, so you've got this piece of gold that came from in Germany that came from Cornwall, and the thing about this paper that's about the Scandinavian Bronze Age is that 4,000 years ago, the Scandinavian bronze was being made from copper that they sourced from Britain. And then that went on for about 500 years. And then all of a sudden, that trade stopped. And all the bronze was made with copper that they sourced from Italy. What happened? We have no idea. But it was almost like a new buyer came into the company and he wanted to use his mates over there instead of the old guy's mates over that way. We have no idea what caused that, but all of a sudden, it seems, all right, prehistorically overnight, but, metaphorically, but it was this incredibly sudden change between sourcing your metal from Britain to suddenly sourcing your metal from Italy. I think that's exciting, and obviously, as I said, I haven't read the full report yet, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. But so that's one aspect. Disruption of a trade route, definitely.
Well, as we said, that of course, megalithic in the way that we understand it is well gone by the time this late Bronze Age collapses is happening. We can, for the most part, sort of have the cut-off point for what we regard as megalithic culture as 2,500 BC, but this is at least 1,000 years later. But
it is interesting, isn't it, when you look at so you've got that Beaker as a culture, for example, coming into Britain and bringing metalworking with it. That what does that have to do with the cessation of trade routes and the way people are interrelating with each other across countries? There's so much went on in that period of time.
But here's the thing: I think there's a fair record of this collapse. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it. But it is I would say that there's the deeper you go back into prehistory, the less likely you'll see you are to see changes like this or collapses like this, that rather like breathe. I mean, we know about the El Argo culture. Sorry, go back to the El Argo culture, but we didn't know anything. But there's a culture, a state, a what have you that became huge and then collapsed. And of course, it was El Argo culture was trading in silver. Would have completely whatever happened there would have completely disrupted Mediterranean trade at that time, and yet we don't really have any record of the impact that collapse would have had on the rest of the up and down the Mediterranean.
Do you know what? It's an interesting point, because you probably had, but I hadn't thought about it. With Jimmy's question right at the beginning, where you mentioned slavery. Yeah. You think, well, El Argo culture. Well, that's one of the few places where you think, no, okay, that's slavery. Maybe he's not so wide of the mark. Yeah. It's it's an interesting thing, though, isn't it? That you making the point about the disruptions of all sorts of habits going on, and as you said, megalithic building had pretty much stopped by the time we were getting into any serious metalworking anyway. But
I often wonder, because I've been reading recently also, I mean, right way back in, before the Neolithic, essentially, 5,000, 6,000 years BCE in Northern Europe, the linear band ceramic culture, pretty much a precursor to all we know about megalithic culture in Europe. Towards the end of the existence of the linear band ceramic culture, they were having a dreadful time by all accounts, evidenced by the massacres and the cannibalism and quite a lot of strife going on. It all dates towards a period, just towards the end of their flourishing, if you like. And after this period of seems to be an awful lot of infighting, then it goes away. So those kinds of pan cultural declines don't, the actual effect on individuals, on peoples, and the disruption it causes to everyone around is not necessarily left in the record at all. So Lord knows what ructions and ripples caused by such collapses are. I confess to not being read up on the late Bronze Age collapse in the Mediterranean myself. So apart from that, I find it difficult to answer the question very.
But I think it warrants generalizations, because there aren't that many specifics that you can actually put into this that that are known differences. If you're talking about the late Bronze Age, I mean, there was a massive cultural shift about 1500 BC, and that's that's it. That's all you can really say. But But I am fascinated by those shifting trade routes, and that's something that we're looking at as well.
Oh yes, they'll definitely be getting a mention one way or another. I'm moving on to Benjamin Lo-Fi's question. Again, I'll read the full question. Actually, you made us. I'm sort of truncating a lot of questions that did have a kernel of a question in them. I did miss out some questions tonight that were extremely long, and I couldn't discern really what the question was. So apologies to whoever was posting.
Keep them concise.
Keep them concise, folks. Yeah. Anyway, Benjamin asks, hi guys, really enjoying your work. Thank you very much, Benjamin.
Thank you.
Glad you're enjoying it. A bit of a prehistory novice, but I've been pondering on a theme. Does prehistory end with the advent of text? I wonder if, as in ancient Greece, the written word can only account for so much, because even in this literate culture, myth was still a massive part of people's psyches. To what extent does myth fill in for fact, and what are the virtues and hazards of this? What myths will there be about our time in 10,000 years? That's probably enough to be getting on with. It was Benjamin said that's enough to be getting on with, not me.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks, and thanks for the question. Oh my goodness, there's so much in that, and that's a philosophy question, I guess, that could take us down many avenues.
The thing is that it's so at the root of this question is the fundamental and you could say shameful thing, really, that yes, history, prehistory, the difference is it's not written down. That's it.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, one of the things that Michael and I are working very much on at the moment is you can look at cultures. So we mentioned Egypt before. I take Egypt as an example. That in dynastic Egypt, you had all this written stuff going on. We have history from a time period when, if you're going to look at Northern Europe and Britain, it's thousands of years before we've got history. So what we're seeing, if we can pull together, is are there aspects where, so we've got the El Argar culture in southern Spain, who, no, they didn't have any written word either, but they traded throughout the Mediterranean, and therefore probably with Egypt as well, and certainly Greece. So is there a way of finding through the history of Greece and Egypt, is there a way of connecting dots into the prehistory of Europe? Because they were clearly all interacting. Now, the honest answer is we don't know. We're looking. But yeah, history is just somebody wrote it down. That's it.
But as to the further question about myth, whoa.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, because of course there's as much myth in the world as there ever was now. The internet is a huge contributor to myth, and just because it's not written down. In fact, I would advocate that because in times before things were written down, there were people trusted with the task of conveying story, of conveying what the ancestors had been up to, what had happened in the past. And they were trained to keep that. They were trained to keep that sacred. So in a sense, we'd probably call it myth because it was delivered in the form of story, but it probably was accurate nonetheless, because there was no advantage. There's no nothing to be gained from changing the story. You devalue your skill and all the rest of it in your ability to if you're trained to the nth degree to be able to memorize something, then what's the point of changing what you're memorizing? You undermine your own skill. We're trusted with this kind of sacred task. I'm going off on one because I don't have any evidence of these people. Kind of. except that traditions, there are traditions handed down which are quite extraordinary. I mean, if
But isn't it fascinating though when you look, for example, the reason that the Greek myths are as popular today as they have ever been is because the Greek myths talk about archetypal aspects of the human psyche, and we can all recognize ourselves in different aspects of whether it's the Titans or whoever in the Greek myths. So that's a very important thing. But very interesting that if you compare that with the Irish myths, that we should get Anthony on a regular intervals, shouldn't we? Anthony Murphy of Mythical Island. That you look at the Irish myths, and they are stories that are woven as myth, and it's fascinating to see how there are various things that come out, from archaeology that you see have correlations with the myths. So it's a way of, probably it's a way of something that actually happened being woven into a story that is more memorable. If you make things big and bright and powerful, then they're so much more easy to remember and pass on. And I think that's probably one of the most important aspects of myth. In terms of, I mean, the last part of that question was what will our myths be? What will the myths be about us in 10,000 years' time? Oh, good grief! I just hope they make it sound better, because we're not in a good time, are we? It reminded me, Mike and I were talking about this earlier on. I don't know if any of you are aware of Michael Moorcock's books. They're fantasy novels, which they could be Iron Age culture, but they're kind of probably in a dystopian future, however many thousand years on. And there's one particular one where the hero, Dorian Hawkmoon, he travels to a country called Asia Communista. Now, these books were written in the 70s. But the thing is, this country is this completely closed-off place that hardly anybody ever gets to. And the country is called Asia Communista. And their gods, or somebody's gods anyway, but they're all misspellings of John, Paul, George, and Ringo. So I can just see that, if you're talking about what will our myths be in the future, then, it could so easily be that kind of thing. We're going
Right
to
News Network. Hats off to you,
What's
sir.
that?
Thank you so much. We've got a super chat from Right News Network.
Thank
You're very kind.
Much.
Yeah, it all goes to a good cause.
It does. I don't know what they'll be saying about us in the future. It's 10,000 years. We might have wiped ourselves off the planet by then.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a deep dive, this thing about myth, isn't it? I think there was a kind of oxymoronic thing about what extent does myth fill in for fact. And I don't think true myth, ever filled in for fact. It was a way of conveying fact. Yes. Yeah. Myths weren't made up stories. They always carried something, whether it was allegorical or whether it was truthful or whether it was historical. It's a way, myth in the past was a way of remembering or carrying knowledge.
Well, it's amazing when you look at the different religions around the world. It's amazing how many correlations there are in the god myths. It's amazing that almost every culture on earth has a flood myth. The Christian idea that Noah is remotely Christian.
What I'm saying is that the danger is now that myth gets conflated with out and out lies and made up stuff and conspiracy theories and all the rest of it. Those aren't myths; those are lies.
Stories, just
stories. Yeah,
whatever. Yeah, they're made up stuff. As opposed to, yeah, you're absolutely right that myth is a way of conveying information in a sufficiently powerful way that it never gets diluted. The myths don't change.
And myths are designed, whatever their purpose, whether it's historical, or spiritual, or otherwise. The idea of a myth is to hold a society together, to gather around an idea, whichever way that goes. Yes, not to break it apart. Ta-da! Yes.
Yes, I mean, I think, going back to the Greek myths briefly, that when you look at the aspects of the Greek myths that are so clearly, about social norms and whether this is acceptable. You look at petulant behaviour. Somebody always comes a cropper when they act like an arse, or or Narcissus. So wrapped up in himself that Narcissus turned into a flower. Well, it's all those things. It's lessons to be learned. There are aspects of humanity that don't ever change. We're no different from, we've just got tech. We're no different from the way they were. It's just tech that makes us different.
Internet makes us different.
Yes.
Bloody Twitter makes us different.
Yeah.
And I think we've come to the end of the lollipop.
That's an hour and 20 minutes already. I know. Where does it go?
Yes, yeah. I haven't been scanning the chat momentarily. I don't pick up everything, obviously, because
no.
Yeah, when I'm not listening to Rupert, I'm listening to myself.
Yeah.
But I haven't. There were one or two questions. I'm sorry if we did miss a question or two that came up in the chat, because we have to prioritise folk that have taken the time to pose a question in the last month. So sorry if what seemed like a really great question may have got lost in the chat there. Apologies. Oh, Right News Network, you're going mad, sir. Whoever you are.
Thank you so much.
You're very kind.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Life's full of surprises, isn't it? Who knew?
It certainly is. Yes, I mean, do you know, we love your questions and very grateful. As Michael said before, trying to make them concise because otherwise, not least of all, we've got an hour of reading to do before we can.
Yes. Yeah.
But yes, I will in the next few days. I will put up the call for questions for next month.
And we'll look forward to that. As I said before, so many times, there've been some corker questions in there, and some questions that have really had us searching our brains, and fishing for words. But it's a really great thing, a really great exercise because it has us go looking further than we normally would.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for
also Joe, you asked a question about bugs. I'm going to answer you. You privately because you're clearly interested. I'm not sure everybody else is.
Fair enough. Anyway, what if and thank you for all your likes, and if you're not subscribed to our channel, you've enjoyed tonight and would like to get alerts of when things are coming up, do hit the subscribe button and the like button.
Sorry, Michael, can I just interrupt?
Yes, you can.
Lynn has said here, Lynn Bailey, still didn't manage to get a question to the correct place. I replied to the link for this program. Now,
Oh,
what you want to do, Lynn, is it won't be up yet. So if you look next week, then if you go to the YouTube, the main page for our channel, then one of the tabs listed along, there's a line of tabs. One of them says community. If you click on community, then the call for questions is in there, and people just write their questions underneath.
And Lynn, if you're subscribed to the channel, you'll get notification of when Rupert puts it up as well. If you're subscribed to the channel and you also click to get notifications, that's the important thing. The added subscriptions, as I said, we just passed the 35,000. How long will it take us to get to 100,000? That's the goal. You can help us, folks.
Yes.
But the likes and subscribes just do help the YouTube algorithm serve this and other videos to folks, so other people get to see that we're alive and kicking and making these videos. So thanks for those. What else? What have we got coming up? What can people expect to see? Expect to see as a notification next? I think it'll be the next prehistory show number 4, I reckon. I'm very near ending the edit on that, so I think the prehistory show will be out before the end of the week. Yeah, and if you've never seen the prehistory show before, we made 3 last year and then kind of gave up, and we've decided no, they were a really good idea, having a magazine program about things in prehistory.
Just a huge amount of work, so we stopped doing them. But then, as Mike said, we just thought, no, we should keep doing these. We've got some more flashes coming, and we try to keep those going on a regular basis. So
the prehistory show is a magazine show. We do news, we do interviews. I go out and about in the round about the UK sometimes with me camera, bring stuff back. We haven't got Stone. For those of you who know, we used to have an item called Stonehead of the Month, where we used to honour somebody who'd gone beyond the bounds of duty in their services to prehistory. We've actually changed that now. It's going to be the Prehistory Guys Badge of Honour.
Yes.
So look out for that, and a bit of whimsy to finish off. And usually the show's about an hour long or something like that.
It's about an hour long. I think this one might be just tipping over the hour, isn't it? I don't know.
It's not. It's 40 minutes. You'll be surprised.
You're joking. Oh,
unless I've missed something. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay, well, we did try to be a little bit more concise. Yeah, that's good.
We've got an interview with Tim Darvell coming up as well. Another interview with Tim Darvell, which is fantastic. I meant to say earlier, actually, about what Tim said in that interview, apropos of what you were saying about development, archaeology, so much of archaeology riding on the back of development work. And he was saying that there is so much archaeology going on at the moment because of the development and HS2 rail network and the Stonehenge tunnel, that they're actually seriously short of archaeologists. So folks, if you're in the UK and you have any kind of experience of being on a dig and know the drill as far as field archaeology is concerned, now's the time to go looking for how you could serve in your area, or even further beyond. They're crying out for archaeologists with experience. So that's me. I'm done.
Yes, La Herbert said, I'd prefer a Stonehead badge. Yeah, the badge hasn't changed.
No.
It's one of those. It's just... we just called it something different because there were some people that it was just wholly inappropriate to be calling that person the Stonehead of the Month. So
yeah.
Hey ho.
Brilliant.
On that note,
On that note,
thank you
I
ever
wonder,
so
if we,
much,
I wonder
folks.
if we can make it to 100 likes. Anybody not press the like button? It's on 96 at the moment.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Anyway, we'll get there.
We'll hang around a
It's
minute
fine.
or
We
two.
like round numbers, don't we? We're not complaining. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for watching and your contribution and being nice and having fun.
Night,
that's
Kelly.
it from me.
Thanks, folks. We'll see you next time.
Cheers. Bye for now.
Bye.